The fluorescent lights in the family court waiting room buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over the peeling linoleum floors. I sat on a plastic chair that had been bolted to the wall, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. The air smelled of stale coffee and desperation, a scent I'd grown intimately familiar with over the past 6 months since Derek had filed for divorce. My daughter Emma slept against my shoulder, her tiny hand clutching the frayed edge of my cardigan. She was 3 years old and blissfully unaware that today, her father planned to take everything from me, including her. I'd arrived at the courthouse 2 hours early, partly from anxiety, and partly because I couldn't afford to miss the single bus that came through our neighborhood at dawn. My court-appointed lawyer had called yesterday to cancel some family emergency that couldn't wait. He'd assured me the judge would grant a continuance, that I shouldn't worry. But Derek's lawyer was Nathan Ashworth, a shark in a $1,000 suit who'd never lost a custody case. I knew there would be no continuance. Not for someone like me. The waiting room gradually filled with other broken families, but I barely noticed them. My mind kept replaying Derek's words from our last phone call. "You'll have nothing, Sarah. Not the house, not the car, not even Emma. You're a broke waitress who can barely keep the lights on. What judge would give a child to someone like you?" He wasn't wrong. After he'd drained our joint account and moved in with his mistress, my former best friend Jennifer, I'd been scrambling to survive. The small apartment I'd found in the rundown part of town cost nearly all of my paycheck from the diner. The rest went to the sitter who watched Emma during my double shifts. I was drowning, and Derek knew it. "Sarah Mitchell?" A bailiff called my name, his voice echoing off the institutional walls. My heart seized. I gently shook Emma awake, gathering our things, a diaper bag with a broken zipper, my purse held together with safety pins, and a folder containing the few documents I'd managed to gather: pay stubs, rental agreement, character references from my manager at the diner. "Mama, I'm sleepy," Emma whimpered, rubbing her eyes. "I know, baby. Just a little longer." The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined from TV shows, but infinitely more terrifying. Derek sat at the plaintiff's table with Nathan Ashworth, both of them looking crisp and confident in their designer suits. Derek's hair was freshly cut, his teeth unnaturally white from recent bleaching. He'd transformed himself since leaving me, shedding the beer gut and wrinkled t-shirts for a polished veneer that money could buy. He didn't even glance at Emma. I made my way to the defendant's table, acutely aware of my thrift store dress and scuffed shoes. The hem had come loose that morning, and I'd had to safety pin it in the courthouse bathroom. I set Emma down in the chair beside me, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open my folder. "Ms. Mitchell, where is your legal representation?" Judge Morrison peered at me over her reading glasses, her expression already impatient. "Your Honor, my court-appointed attorney had an emergency," he said. "This court does not grant continuances for personal convenience." She cut me off. "You should have arranged backup counsel." "With what money?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I said quietly, "I understand, Your Honor. I'm prepared to represent myself." Nathan Ashworth smiled, a predator scenting blood. Derek leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that smug expression on his face that I'd once found charming and now made my stomach turn. "Very well, Mr. Ashworth. You may proceed." What followed was a systematic destruction of my character. Nathan painted me as an unfit mother, unstable employment, inadequate housing, no family support system. He produced photographs of my apartment building, making it look like a condemned crack house rather than the modest but clean home I'd worked so hard to provide. He called Derek's mother as a witness, who testified, perjured herself really, that I'd always been neglectful and emotionally unstable. I sat there, voiceless and powerless, watching my life disintegrate. Emma played quietly with a small doll I'd bought her from the dollar store, unaware that her father was trying to erase me from her existence. When it was my turn to speak, I stumbled through my defense. I had no lawyer's eloquence, no practiced arguments, just the truth. That I loved my daughter, that I worked 2 jobs to provide for her, that Derek had abandoned us for another woman, and now wanted to punish me for his guilt. "Ms. Mitchell," Judge Morrison interrupted, her tone suggesting she'd already made her decision. "The court must consider the child's best interests. Mr. Mitchell can provide stability, a 2-parent household, Financial security. He cheated on me with my best friend. The words burst out before I could stop them. He emptied our bank account and left us with nothing. He hasn't seen Emma in 6 months, hasn't paid a dime in support, and now he wants to take her just to hurt me. Ms. Mitchell, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt. Tears streamed down my face. This wasn't a courtroom. It was an execution chamber, and I was completely defenseless. Your Honor, if I may, the voice came from behind me, deep and smooth as expensive whiskey. It carried an authority that made everyone in the room turn toward the door. I twisted in my seat and felt the air leave my lungs. The man standing in the courtroom entrance was unlike anyone I'd ever seen. Tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders and a lean frame. But it wasn't his appearance that made my breath catch. It was the aura of absolute power that radiated from him like heat from a flame. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, clearly security, their eyes constantly scanning the room with professional wariness. Everyone in the courtroom seemed to shrink in his presence, including Nathan Ashworth, whose confident smirk had vanished. And you are? Judge Morrison's voice had lost its sharp edge, replaced by something almost deferential. Dante Salvatore, Your Honor. I'm here to represent Ms. Mitchell. He moved into the room with the fluid grace of a predator, his footsteps silent on the courthouse floor. One of his security guards remained by the door, while the other took up position along the side wall. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I had no idea who this man was, or why he was here. But the way Derek had gone pale at the mention of his name told me everything I needed to know about the kind of power Dante Salvatore wielded. He approached our table, and I caught his scent. Sandalwood, and something darker, more dangerous. His eyes met mine for the briefest moment, and I saw something flicker in those cold, dark depths. Recognition? Impossible. I'd never seen this man before in my life. Your Honor, I apologize for my tardiness, Dante said, his voice never rising above conversational volume yet somehow commanding absolute attention. There was an unavoidable delay. I trust you'll permit me a few moments to confer with my client before we proceed. It wasn't really a question. Judge Morrison nodded, looking flustered in a way I'd never seen a judge look before. Of course, Mr. Salvatore, we'll take a 15-minute recess. As the judge retreated to her chambers, Dante turned to face me fully. Up close, he was even more devastating. Features too perfect to be merely handsome. A slight scar cutting through his left eyebrow that only added to his dangerous appeal, but it was his eyes that held me captive. Dark as midnight, they seemed to see straight through every defense I'd ever built. Ms. Mitchell, he said softly, extending his hand. We should talk. I stared at his hand. Strong, elegant fingers, a watch that probably cost more than my car had, and then up at his face. I don't understand. I can't afford. You don't need to afford me. He glanced at Derek and Nathan, who were watching us with transparent alarm. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, a promise of violence so subtle and so certain that I saw Derek actually flinch. Consider me a concerned party with an interest in seeing justice done. I should have been suspicious. Should have questioned why a man who clearly moved in circles of wealth and power beyond my comprehension would offer to help a broke waitress. But I was drowning, and he was offering me a lifeline. Okay, I whispered. His hand closed around mine, warm and strong, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. And I felt something else, something that terrified me almost as much as losing Emma. The way his thumb brushed across my knuckles, the intensity in his gaze that suggested this was about more than legal representation, the subtle possessiveness in how he positioned himself between me and Derek. I had no idea who Dante Salvatore really was, but I was about to find out that I'd just made a deal with the most dangerous man in the city, and that my husband had made an enemy far more powerful than he could possibly imagine. The conference room Dante led me to was just down the hall from the courtroom, but it felt like entering a different world. His security guard, a mountain of a man with a scar across his jaw, opened the door, and then positioned himself outside, creating a barrier between us and the chaos we'd left behind. Emma clung to my hand, her eyes wide as she took in the strange man who'd appeared like some dark angel. Dante crouched down to her level, his severe expression softening in a way that made my heart stutter. "Hello, Emma," he said gently. "My name is Dante. I'm going to help your mama today. Is that okay?" She nodded shyly, tucking herself against my leg. He didn't push, just stood gracefully and gestured for me to sit at the polished conference table. I noticed he waited until I was seated before taking his own chair, an old-fashioned courtesy that seemed at odds with the dangerous energy that hummed beneath his civilized surface. "I don't understand," I began, my voice barely steady. "Who are you? Why are you helping me? I can't pay you, Mr. Salvatore. I can barely afford groceries." "Dante?" he corrected, his dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made me feel exposed. "And I'm aware of your financial situation, Sarah." "May I call you Sarah?" I nodded, throat dry. "Your husband made a mistake." He leaned back in his chair, deceptively relaxed, but I could see the coiled tension in his shoulders. A significant one. He and his business partner, a man named Marcus Chen, stole from me. $2 million to be precise. They thought they were clever, routing the money through offshore accounts, creating shell companies. My blood turned to ice. "I don't know anything about that. I swear, He raised a hand, silencing me. "I know. I've had Derek under surveillance for 3 months. You were already separated when he made his play. You're innocent in this." The casual way he mentioned surveillance sent a chill down my spine. What kind of lawyer had people under surveillance? What kind of lawyer made Nathan Ashworth, a man who'd built his reputation on ruthlessness, look genuinely frightened? Then why help me? Why not just go after Derek directly? Something flickered across Dante's face. Something dark and satisfied that made him look almost feral. "Oh, I intend to go after Derek, but he made this personal when he decided to destroy you in court. You see, Sarah, I have a particular hatred for men who abuse their power over those weaker than themselves. It offends me." The way he said offends made it sound like a death sentence. "I still don't understand. You don't know me. Why would you care what happens to me?" He was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving over my face with an attention that felt almost physical. When he spoke, his voice was softer, but no less intense. "Let's just say I have my reasons. Reasons that will become clear in time. For now, all you need to know is that I'm going to make sure you keep your daughter, and I'm going to make sure Derek Mitchell regrets every decision that brought him to this moment." There was something he wasn't telling me, something in the way his jaw tightened when he looked at Emma, in the flash of old pain that crossed his features before he could mask it. But I was too desperate to question my good fortune. "What do I need to do?" "Nothing. Just let me handle this." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "When we go back in there, don't speak unless I tell you to. Don't react to anything Derek or his lawyer says." "Can you do that?" I nodded, even though every instinct screamed that I was making a deal with the devil himself. When we returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere had completely changed. Derek and Nathan were huddled together, whispering urgently. Derek's mother had disappeared, likely sent away by Nathan, who was smart enough to know they needed to regroup. Judge Morrison took her seat, her expression carefully neutral, but I noticed the way her eyes tracked Dante's movements across the room. Everyone tracked Dante's movements. He commanded attention the way fire commanded heat, absolutely and without effort. "Mr. Salvatore, you may proceed with your representation of Ms. Mitchell," the judge said. "Thank you, Your Honor." Dante remained standing, his presence dominating the small courtroom. "I'll be brief. My client has been subjected to a campaign of character assassination based on misleading evidence and perjured testimony. Mr. Mitchell has presented himself as a concerned father seeking custody of his daughter, but the reality is quite different. He opened a leather portfolio, expensive, Italian, probably worth more than my monthly rent, and removed several documents. His security guard, who'd somehow procured a tablet, began displaying images on a screen that had been wheeled in during our recess. "This is Derek Mitchell 3 weeks ago at the Sapphire Club in Miami. The image showed Derek with his arm around a woman who definitely wasn't Jennifer, his hand on her breast, clearly intoxicated. And here, 2 days after filing for divorce. Another image, Derek at a poker table, chips worth thousands scattered in front of him. And my personal favorite, Derek Mitchell 5 months ago, the day before he emptied his joint account with Ms. Mitchell, depositing a cashier's check for $50,000 into a private account his wife knew nothing about. Nathan shot to his feet. Objection. How did you even obtain these photographs? This is an invasion of privacy. Dante turned to him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I obtained them through perfectly legal means, counselor. Unlike the photographs you presented of Ms. Mitchell's apartment, which I notice were taken from inside the building without permission or warrant. Should we discuss invasion of privacy? Nathan's face went crimson, but he sat down. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Continue, Mr. Salvatore. Derek Mitchell is not seeking custody because he loves his daughter. He hasn't seen her in 6 months, hasn't called, hasn't sent birthday gifts, hasn't asked about her well-being. He's seeking custody for 2 reasons: to punish his ex-wife for his own guilt, and to create the appearance of stability while he's under investigation for financial crimes. Derek jumped up. That's a lie. I'm not under any investigation. Sit down, Mr. Mitchell, Judge Morrison ordered. Dante continued as if Derek hadn't spoken. As of this morning, the FBI has opened an investigation into Derek Mitchell and his business partner, Marcus Chen, for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. I have documentation here from Special Agent Rodriguez confirming the investigation. He slid papers across to the judge, who reviewed them with widening eyes. My mind reeled. How had Dante arranged all of this? FBI investigations didn't just appear overnight. Unless he'd had Derek in his sights for far longer than 3 months. Furthermore, Dante said, his voice dropping to that dangerous purr that made my spine tingle, I have here a sworn affidavit from Jennifer Hayes, Mr. Mitchell's current romantic partner, stating that Derek has been verbally abusive, has a gambling problem, and has expressed his intention to send Emma to boarding school the moment custody is finalized. Apparently, actually raising his daughter isn't part of his plan. Nathan was frantically whispering to Derek, who'd gone from red to ashen. I'd never seen Derek scared before. He was a bully, but he'd always been confident in his ability to charm or intimidate his way through life. He wasn't confident now. Your Honor, Dante said, gathering his papers with unhurried precision. Ms. Mitchell is far from a perfect parent. She's poor. She works long hours. Her apartment is in a rough neighborhood. But she loves her daughter. Every dollar she makes goes to providing for Emma. Every decision she makes is with her daughter's best interests at heart. The question this court must answer is simple. Would you rather place a child with a loving mother who struggles financially, or with a father under FBI investigation who plans to abandon his daughter to boarding school while he parties in Miami? The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Mr. Ashworth, do you have any response to these allegations? Nathan looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Your Honor, we request a continuance to review this new evidence. Denied. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. You pushed for this hearing to proceed without Ms. Mitchell's representation. You'll get your ruling today. She spent several minutes reviewing the documents Dante had provided, her expression growing darker with each page. Finally, she looked up. Custody of Emma Mitchell is awarded to Sarah Mitchell, Mr. Mitchell. You're granted supervised visitation only, pending the outcome of the federal investigation. If you're convicted of any crimes, those visitation rights will be revoked. You are ordered to pay child support in the amount of $1,500 per month, retroactive to the date of separation. Furthermore, you are ordered to vacate the marital home within 30 days. The house will be sold, and proceeds split evenly between both parties. Derek exploded. This is bullshit. She got to him. She fucked him, didn't she? That's how... The security guard by the door moved so fast I barely registered it. Suddenly he was beside Derek, one massive hand on Derek's shoulder, squeezing just hard enough to make Derek gasp and sink back into his chair. Mr. Mitchell. Judge Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Derek nodded, face twisted with impotent rage and genuine fear. This hearing is adjourned. I sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Emma was still mine. The nightmare was over. I'd won. But when I turned to thank Dante, the expression on his face stopped the words in my throat. He was watching Derek with the cold patience of a hunter who'd just set a trap. This wasn't over for him. The custody hearing had been a battle. The war was just beginning. And somehow, I'd just become a pawn in something far more dangerous than a divorce. Come, Dante said softly, his hand appearing at the small of my back, warm through the thin fabric of my dress. Let's get you and Emma somewhere safe. Safe? Safe from what? His eyes met mine, and in their dark depths I saw a truth that terrified me. From the consequences of your husband's choices, he said. Derek made powerful enemies when he stole from me. And those enemies don't forgive. The black SUV waiting outside the courthouse looked like something from a movie. Sleek, expensive, with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. The security guard who'd silenced Derek opened the rear door, and Dante gestured for me to enter. I can't, I said, taking a step back, Emma heavy in my arms. I need to catch the bus home. Thank you for everything, but Sarah. The way he said my name, patient but firm, made me stop. Derek knows where you live. He's angry and humiliated, and men like him are most dangerous when they feel powerless. You're not going back to that apartment, not today. Fear crawled up my spine. Where are you taking us? Somewhere secure, just for tonight until I can arrange proper protection. He must have seen the panic in my face because his expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to think about Emma's safety. He was right, and I hated it. Derek had looked murderous when the judge ruled against him, and if he was really involved with criminals, if he'd really stolen $2 million from Dante Salvatore, I climbed into the SUV. The interior smelled of leather, and that sandalwood scent I was beginning to associate with Dante. He slid in beside me, while his security guard took the front passenger seat next to the driver. Another hard-faced man in a dark suit who didn't acknowledge our presence. Emma immediately curled up on the seat, exhausted from the emotional morning. I pulled her against me, acutely aware of how close Dante sat, how his presence seemed to fill the entire vehicle. Where are we going? I asked as the SUV pulled smoothly into traffic. My property outside the city. It's secure, private. You and Emma will be comfortable there. Your property. I laughed, but it came out hollow. I don't even know what you really do, Mr. Salvatore. You're not just a lawyer, are you? He turned to look at me, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. No, Sarah. I'm not just a lawyer. Then what are you? I'm a businessman. I handle acquisitions, investments, negotiations. Sometimes those negotiations require a certain degree of persuasion that conventional businessmen aren't comfortable with. It was the most elegant way of saying criminal I'd ever heard. You're with the Mafia. It wasn't a question. He smiled. A real smile this time, though it held more darkness than humor. That's a very outdated term, but yes. I suppose some people would call me that. I prefer to think of myself as someone who operates in the gray spaces between legal and illegal. I provide services, maintain order in certain sectors, and ensure that agreements are honored. By stealing money? By punishing those who steal from me. His hand moved to rest on the back of the seat, close enough to my shoulder that I could feel its warmth. Derek and Marcus didn't just take my money, Sarah. They took money I was holding in trust for other parties. Very dangerous parties who expect me to recover their investments. With interest. So you're going to kill him. My voice was surprisingly steady. I haven't decided yet. He tilted his head, studying me with that unnerving attention. Does that frighten you? Knowing what I am? It should have. I should have been terrified, but sitting there in the leather-scented luxury of his vehicle, my daughter safe beside me, I felt something far more complicated than fear. I'm more frightened of losing Emma than I am of you, I admitted. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition. Good. You should be. Derek would have destroyed her, raised her to be as hollow and selfish as he is. I couldn't allow that. Why do you care? You said you had reasons, but you never explained. The SUV turned onto a highway, the city falling away behind us. Dante was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher, touched by something raw. I had a daughter once, Isabella. She would have been about Emma's age now. He stared out the window at the passing landscape. Her mother was like you, vulnerable, kind, trying to protect her child from a monster. I wasn't there to save them. I was too focused on building my empire, on proving myself to men who would never respect me. And while I was gone, her father, my enemy, found them. His jaw tightened, the muscle jumping beneath his skin. I came home to graves, Sarah, 2 of them. My Isabella and her mother, buried because I wasn't strong enough, wasn't ruthless enough to protect them. My hand moved of its own accord, covering his where it rested on the seat. I'm sorry. He looked down at our joined hands, his expression unreadable. I swore that day I would never allow another child to suffer, because weak men are allowed to wield power they haven't earned. When I saw Emma in that courtroom, saw the way Derek looked at her, or rather, didn't look at her, I saw Isabella, and I saw myself, failing again. You didn't fail. You saved us. I saved you from Derek. His hand turned beneath mine, his fingers threading through mine with a possessiveness that should have alarmed me. But I've brought you into my world now, and my world is far more dangerous than your husband could ever be. The SUV turned off the highway onto a private road that wound through dense forest. We drove for another 15 minutes before emerging into a clearing that made my breath catch. The estate sprawled before us, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, perched on a hillside overlooking a private lake. It was beautiful and isolated, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. I shivered, and Dante's grip on my hand tightened. You're safe here, he said quietly. I give you my word. And what's your word worth? Everything. The single word carried absolute conviction. In my world, Sarah, your word is your currency. Break it, and you're dead. I don't break my word. The SUV stopped in front of the main entrance, where a woman in her 50s waited, elegant, stern-faced, wearing a crisp uniform that marked her as staff. Dante helped me out, then carefully lifted Emma, who barely stirred in her sleep. This is Mrs. Chen, he said, though his tone suggested no relation to the Marcus Chen who'd stolen from him. She manages my household. She'll show you to your rooms and provide anything you need. Mrs. Chen's expression softened when she saw Emma. Poor little thing. Come, Ms. Mitchell. I've prepared the guest suite. There's a nursery adjoining if you'd prefer her to have her own space. I followed her inside, too overwhelmed to fully process the luxury surrounding me, the soaring ceilings, the artwork that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime, the view of the lake through floor-to-ceiling windows. The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment. The bed was enormous, covered in linens so soft they felt like clouds. The bathroom had a tub big enough to swim in, and a shower with jets I didn't know the purpose of. The adjoining nursery had been stocked with everything a child could need: toys, books, clothes in Emma's size. How did you know her size? I asked Mrs. Chen. Mr. Salvatore is very thorough, she replied diplomatically. Dinner will be served at 7. If you need anything before then, just press the button by the door. She left me alone in the opulent silence. I laid Emma on the bed, her small body looking impossibly tiny against the expensive linens. Then I walked to the window and stared out at the lake, trying to understand what had just happened to my life. This morning, I'd been about to lose everything. Now I was standing in a mansion, my daughter safe, my custody secured. But the price? I didn't know what the price would be yet. Only that men like Dante Salvatore didn't save people out of pure altruism, no matter what tragic past they carried. A knock at the door made me turn. Dante stood in the doorway, having removed his suit jacket, in just his white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. He looked younger, more human, also more dangerous. I thought you might want this, he said, holding out a phone, sleek, new, expensive. Your number is the only one programmed in it. The other numbers are mine: office, personal cell, security team. If you need anything, day or night, you call. I took the phone, our fingers brushing. Electricity sparked between us, and I saw his eyes darken. "Why are you really doing this?" I whispered. "It's not just about Isabella, is it?" He stepped into the room, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "No," he admitted. "It's not just about Isabella." "Then what?" His hand rose to my face, his thumb tracing the curve of my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "When I researched Derek, I found photographs of you, from before he destroyed your spirit. You were laughing in one of them, your whole face lit up with joy. And I thought I would do anything to see that light again. You don't even know me. I know enough." His voice dropped to that dangerous purr. "I know you're brave. I know you fight for what matters. I know you'd sacrifice anything for your daughter. And I know that something in me recognized something in you the moment I saw those pictures, Dante. I didn't know what I was asking for him to step back, to step closer. "I won't touch you," he said, though his hand still cradled my face. "Not unless you ask me to. You've been through enough without me adding to your burdens. But I need you to understand something, Sarah. Derek took you for granted. He had something precious and threw it away. I don't make that mistake. What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you're under my protection now. Mine to guard, mine to care for. And I'm a possessive man, Sarah. When something belongs to me, I don't share. I don't let go. I should have been terrified, should have run from the dark promise in his words. Instead, I felt my heart racing for an entirely different reason. I'm not a possession," I managed. "No," he agreed, his thumb still stroking my skin. "You're something far more valuable. You're a choice I'm making, and I always protect my investments." Then he stepped back, breaking the spell, leaving me cold where his touch had been. "Rest," he said, his voice returning to that controlled calm. "We'll talk more at dinner. There are things you need to know about Derek's situation, about what's coming." He was at the door when I found my voice. "Dante? Thank you. For everything." He looked back at me, and the intensity in his gaze made me feel naked despite being fully clothed. "Don't thank me yet, Sarah. You don't know what I'm going to ask from you in return." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my sleeping daughter, and the terrifying realization that I'd just traded one cage for another. This one was gilded and beautiful, but it was still a cage, and the man who held the key was far more dangerous than any husband could ever be. I didn't sleep. How could I, when every surface in the room whispered of wealth I'd never imagined, when the silence of the estate pressed against me like a physical weight? Emma slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with the innocence of a child who didn't understand that our lives had fundamentally changed. At 6:30, I showered in that ridiculous bathroom, using products that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Mrs. Chen had left clothes in my size. A simple black dress that fit perfectly, undergarments still in their packaging, even shoes. I tried not to think about how Dante had known my measurements, had planned this before ever walking into that courtroom. He'd been watching me. For how long? Emma woke as I was drying my hair, her eyes wide and uncertain in the unfamiliar room. "Mama, where are we?" "Somewhere safe, baby." I pulled her into my arms, breathing in her little girl scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "Are you hungry?" Mrs. Chen appeared exactly at 7, as if she'd been monitoring our room. She led us through corridors lined with art I didn't understand but knew was priceless, down a sweeping staircase to a dining room that could have seated 20 people comfortably. Dante sat at the head of the table, dressed casually now in dark slacks and a navy sweater that made his eyes look almost black. He rose when we entered, that old-fashioned courtesy again, and pulled out a chair for me before I could react. "Emma," he said, crouching to her level again. "I asked Mrs. Chen to make mac and cheese. Is that okay?" My daughter nodded shyly, and something in my chest cracked at the sight of this dangerous man being so gentle with her. Dinner was surreal. Mrs. Chen served courses I couldn't name, wine I didn't drink because I needed to stay sharp. And through it all, Dante watched me with that unsettling intensity. Emma ate her mac and cheese, occasionally asking questions about the house, the lake, the boats she could see through the windows. Dante answered each question patiently, never condescending, treating her like a person worth listening to. Derek had never done that. After Emma had eaten, Mrs. Chen appeared with a warm smile. "Would you like to see the library, Emma? I have some picture books I think you'd enjoy." I started to protest, but Dante's hand covered mine on the table. "She'll be safe. Mrs. Chen raised 4 children of her own, and we need to talk." I watched Emma skip away with Mrs. Chen, my heart in my throat, before turning to face Dante. "About Derek?" "Among other things." He refilled his wine glass, the movement lazy and controlled. "The FBI investigation is real, but it's also expedited. I have contacts who owed me favors. Derek and Marcus will be arrested within the week. The evidence is substantial. They'll both face significant prison time. You orchestrated all of this. I accelerated what was inevitable. They were sloppy, arrogant. They would have been caught eventually. I simply ensured it happened on my timeline." He took a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving mine. "Derek will spend the next 10 to 15 years in federal prison. He won't be a threat to you or Emma. And Marcus? Marcus is a different problem." Dante's expression hardened. "He was the one who approached Derek, who planned the theft. He has connections. Not as powerful as mine, but dangerous nonetheless. He'll try to make a deal with the FBI. Give them bigger fish to fry in exchange for a reduced sentence. You. Me." He smiled, but it was all edges. "It won't work. I'm very good at keeping my hands clean, but it means Marcus will be desperate, and desperate men are unpredictable. Which is why you and Emma can't go home." My stomach dropped. "For how long?" "Until I've handled the situation permanently." The casual way he said permanently made my blood run cold. "You're going to kill him. I'm going to ensure he's no longer a problem." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Does that bother you? Knowing that I'll do whatever is necessary to protect what's mine? I'm not yours. Aren't you?" He set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "You're living in my house, wearing clothes I provided, eating food I paid for. Your daughter is safe because I made her safe. Your ex-husband is facing prison because I made it happen. At what point, Sarah, do you think you stopped belonging to yourself and started belonging to me?" I shot to my feet, anger flooding through me. "I'm not some possession you acquired. I didn't ask for any of this." He stood as well, moving around the table with that predatory grace. "You're right. You didn't ask, but you accepted. You got in my car. You came to my home. You let me fight your battles, and now you're mine. Whether you want to be or not. That's insane. Is it?" He was close now. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me something, Sarah. When Derek was destroying you in that courtroom, who did you pray would save you? When you thought you'd lose Emma, what did you wish for?" "Not this," I whispered. But my voice lacked conviction. His hand rose to cut my jaw, tilting my face up to his. "You wished for someone powerful enough to stop him, someone ruthless enough to make him pay. Someone who would burn the world down before letting you lose your daughter, and here I am." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Why me? Really, why? There are thousands of women in bad situations. Why did you choose me?" His thumb traced my lower lip, and I stopped breathing. "Because when I saw your picture, something I thought died with Isabella woke up again. Because you reminded me that there are still things in this world worth protecting. Because I looked at you and thought, she's mine. And I've never questioned that instinct." "That's not love, Dante. That's obsession." "I know." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. "Do you want me to apologize for it?" I should have said yes. Should have pushed him away, demanded he take me and Emma home, refused to be drawn into his dangerous world. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "What do you want from me?" "Everything." The word was raw, honest. "Your trust, your time, your thoughts. I want to know every fear that wakes you at night, every dream you've buried. I want to be the first person you think of in the morning and the last voice you hear before sleep. I want Emma to call me something other than a stranger's name. I want you to stop looking at me like I'm a monster and start seeing me as a man." "You are a monster," I said, but there was no heat in it. "Yes." His forehead rested against mine, and I could feel the tension vibrating through his body, the restraint it was taking not to kiss me. "But I'm a monster Who will keep you safe? Who will give Emma everything she needs? Who will make sure no one ever hurts you again? At what cost? Your freedom, perhaps. Your innocence, definitely. Your heart, eventually. I should have run. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to grab Emma and flee, but I'd been drowning for so long, and Dante was air and fire and dark promises that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. I can't. I breathed. I can't give you what you want. You already have. He pulled back slightly, his dark eyes searching mine. You're just too afraid to admit it, but that's all right, Sarah. I'm a patient man. I can wait for you to catch up. A sound from the hallway made us both turn. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, Emma sleeping against her shoulder. She fell asleep during the story, she said softly. The spell broke. Dante stepped back, his mask of control sliding smoothly into place. Take her upstairs. I'll have my men do a perimeter check before bed. As Mrs. Chen carried Emma away, I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. I should go too. Sarah. He caught my wrist gently. I meant what I said. I won't touch you unless you ask. But you need to understand. You're mine to protect now. That means my guards, my rules, my world. Can you live with that? Do I have a choice? His expression softened slightly. There's always a choice. I can arrange a safe house, protection until Derek and Marcus are imprisoned. You'd be free to leave, to rebuild your life without me in it. But you'd never be truly safe. Derek's friends, Marcus's connections, they'd always be out there. Always a threat. With me, you're untouchable. My reputation alone will keep you safe. But it means staying close. It means belonging to me, at least in the eyes of everyone who might wish you harm. A cage, I said quietly. A gilded one. He released my wrist, stepping back. Think about it. You have until morning to decide. Stay and accept my protection, my rules, my claim on you and Emma. Or leave and take your chances with whatever comes. He was giving me a choice that wasn't really a choice at all, because we both knew I couldn't risk Emma's safety on pride or fear. I'll think about it, I said, though we both knew what my answer would be. I made it to the door before his voice stopped me one more time. Sarah, when you decide to stay, and you will, remember that I don't share. Emma's father is in my past now. But if another man looks at you, touches you, even thinks about you the way I think about you, I won't be responsible for what happens to him. I turned to look at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd upended my entire existence in a single day. That's not fair. I never claimed to be fair. His smile was dark and possessive. I claim to be yours. There's a difference. I lay awake that night, Emma curled against me, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of Dante's estate. Footsteps in the hallway, guards doing their rounds, the distant sound of voices, probably Dante on the phone, conducting business that I didn't want to imagine. The whisper of wind across the lake. My phone, the one Dante had given me, buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. Sleep well, Sarah. Tomorrow, everything changes. I knew without checking that it was from him, that he was probably in his own room somewhere in this massive house, thinking of me the way I was thinking of him. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt alive for the first time in years, and that terrified me most of all, because Dante Salvatore was right about one thing. I was already his. I just hadn't admitted it yet, but I would. God help me, I would. 3 weeks passed in a blur of surreal normalcy. Emma thrived in Dante's estate, running through the gardens, feeding the ducks at the lake, learning to paint in the sunroom that Mrs. Chen had converted into a playroom. She laughed more than I'd heard in months, the constant tension that had lived in her small body finally releasing. I tried to maintain boundaries, tried to remember that this was temporary, that we were guests, that Dante Salvatore was a dangerous man who'd inserted himself into our lives for reasons I still didn't fully understand. But it was impossible to maintain distance when he was everywhere. He joined us for breakfast every morning, listening to Emma's chatter about her dreams, her drawings, her discoveries. He worked from home most days, his office door open, and I'd catch glimpses of him on phone calls in Italian or Russian, his voice hard and commanding in ways that made my stomach flutter with something that definitely wasn't fear. In the evenings, after Emma was asleep, he'd find me. Sometimes in the library, where I'd discovered a love of reading I'd forgotten during my marriage. Sometimes on the terrace overlooking the lake, where the sunset painted the water gold and red. He never pushed, never demanded, just sat with me, talking about everything and nothing. Books, music, Emma's latest adventure, carefully avoiding the subjects of Derek or Marcus, or the criminal empire he commanded. It was seduction by inches, by quiet moments and genuine conversation. By the way, he remembered I liked my coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar. By the thoughtful gifts that appeared in my room, not expensive jewelry or clothes, but books I'd mentioned wanting to read. Art supplies because I'd admired Emma's paintings. A journal because he'd noticed I liked to write down my thoughts. He was patient, terrifyingly patient. And I was falling. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Dante's expression as he listened to whoever was on the other end made something cold settle in my stomach. When he hung up, he found me in the kitchen, where I'd been helping Mrs. Chen bake cookies with Emma. "Can we talk?" His voice was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Privately?" Mrs. Chen took over with Emma without being asked. I followed Dante to his office, my heart racing. "Derek and Marcus were arrested this morning," he said, closing the door behind us. "The FBI had enough evidence to bring formal charges. Derek will likely take a plea deal. 10 years, out in 7 with good behavior. Marcus is being more stubborn. That's good, right?" "For Derek, yes. He's no longer your problem." Dante moved to the window, staring out at his estate with an expression I couldn't read. "But Marcus made bail. $2 million. Money he shouldn't have access to, which means he has backers I didn't know about. And his lawyer filed a motion this morning requesting the names of all witnesses involved in the investigation, including me, including you." He turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something like fear in his dark eyes. "He knows you're the reason his case is so strong. The financial records I provided to the FBI, the custody hearing that put Derek's theft in the spotlight, it all traces back to you being under my protection. Marcus isn't stupid. He'll understand what that means. What does it mean? It means he'll try to use you against me." Dante crossed to me in 3 long strides, his hands gripping my shoulders. "He'll think that hurting you will hurt me, that taking you will give him leverage, and he'd be right." My breath caught at the raw admission in his voice. "I need you to leave," he said, and my heart cracked. "I have a house in Switzerland, private, secure, under a name that can't be traced to me. I'll send Mrs. Chen with you, guards. Everything you and Emma need. You'll be safe there until this is resolved." "No." His hands tightened on my shoulders. "Sarah, you don't understand what men like Marcus are capable of. What they'll do to people under my protection." "Then make me understand." I met his gaze steadily, even as fear coursed through me. "Stop protecting me from the truth and tell me what's really happening." He released me, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration I'd never seen from him before. "Marcus has connections to the Volkov Bratva, Russian organized crime. They're not as powerful as my organization, but they're vicious. They don't follow the rules the rest of us observe. No codes, no honor, just brutality and chaos. And you think they'll come after me? I know they will. I've already intercepted 2 reconnaissance attempts, men watching the estate, trying to find weaknesses in our security." His jaw tightened. "I won't let what happened to Isabella happen to you. I can't." Understanding crashed over me. "This isn't about protecting me from Marcus. It's about protecting yourself from losing someone again. Does it matter?" His voice was raw. "Either way, you're in danger because of me, because I couldn't stay away from you. Because I saw you in that courtroom and decided you were mine. Consequences be damned." I stepped closer to him, my hand rising to his chest, feeling his heart thundering beneath my palm. "What if I don't want to leave, Sarah? What if I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid? What if staying with you, even with the danger, feels safer than being alone ever did?" His hand covered mine, pressing it harder against his chest. "You don't know what you're saying, don't I?" I looked up at him, this powerful, dangerous man who'd become my shelter. You've been honest with me about what you are, what you do. You've never lied, never pretended to be something you're not. You've protected Emma and me, given us more in 3 weeks than Derek did in 5 years of marriage. And yes, it terrifies me. You terrify me. But not because I think you'll hurt me. Then why? Because I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know how to survive that. The words hung between us, raw and honest, and impossible to take back. Dante made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a prayer, and then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was everything I'd imagined, and nothing I'd prepared for. Fierce and desperate, his hands tangling in my hair as he backed me against his desk. I gasped against his lips, and he took the opportunity to deepen the kiss, claiming me with a thoroughness that left no room for doubt about his intentions. Mine, he growled against my mouth. Say it. Yours, I breathed, and felt him shudder. He pulled back, his forehead resting against mine, both of us breathing hard. I can't send you away now, not after that. You understand what you've done? You've given me something to lose again, something Marcus can use against me. Then don't lose. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. You said you're powerful. You said you protect what's yours. So protect us, fight for us, and let me fight alongside you instead of hiding me away like I'm something fragile. You are fragile compared to the forces arrayed against us, maybe. But I'm also stronger than you think. I survived Derek. I survived poverty and fear, and nearly losing my daughter. I can survive this too. We can survive this. His kiss this time was gentler, reverent, like I was something precious he was afraid to break. I've never wanted anything the way I want you, he admitted against my lips. It's terrifying. Good. I smiled. Now you know how I feel every time you look at me. The attack came 2 nights later. I woke to the sound of gunfire, sharp cracks that shattered the peaceful silence of the estate. Dante was in my room before I could fully process what was happening, dressed all in black, a gun in his hand that he held with the ease of long practice. Stay down, he ordered, already moving to the window. They breached the south perimeter. My men are engaging. Emma woke crying, and I grabbed her, holding her tight as more gunshots echoed through the night. Dante spoke rapidly into a phone in Italian, his voice hard and commanding. Through the window I could see muzzle flashes in the darkness, figures moving through the trees. How many? I managed to ask. 8, maybe 10. He moved away from the window, coming to crouch beside us. Listen to me carefully. There's a safe room in the basement. Mrs. Chen knows where. I'm going to have Marco take you there, and you're going to stay until I come for you. Understand? What about you? I'm ending this. The look in his eyes was pure predator. Marcus made a mistake coming here. He threatened what's mine. There's no coming back from that. The door burst open and Marco, one of Dante's senior guards, appeared, weapon drawn. Boss, we need to move them now. They're pushing toward the house. Dante kissed me hard and fast, then pressed a small gun into my hand. Insurance. Point and pull if anyone who isn't me or my men comes through that door. Then he was gone, and Marco was ushering Emma and me through corridors I'd never seen, down stairs that descended into darkness. Mrs. Chen waited in the safe room, a windowless concrete bunker with supplies for weeks and monitors showing every angle of the estate. On the screens, I watched Dante's war unfold. He moved through his estate like death incarnate, flanked by his men, systematically eliminating the intruders. It should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a fierce pride watching him protect what was his, what was ours. The battle lasted 30 minutes. When the shooting finally stopped, 7 bodies lay scattered across Dante's property. Marcus wasn't among them. He'd sent his men but stayed safely away, the coward. Dante appeared on the monitors, speaking to his security team, issuing orders. Then he was striding toward the house, and I knew he was coming for us. Mrs. Chen unlocked the safe room door. Dante stood on the other side, blood on his shirt that I prayed wasn't his, eyes wild until they found me. Sarah. Just my name. But it held everything. I handed Emma to Mrs. Chen and went to him, not caring about the blood, about what he'd just done. He crushed me against him, his face buried in my hair. It's over, he said. Marcus won't be a problem anymore. Is he dead? Not yet, but he will be. Tonight, by my hand. He pulled back to look at me. Does that change how you feel about me? I thought about it, really thought about it. About the man who'd saved me in court, who read bedtime stories to my daughter, who'd just killed to protect us. About the darkness in him, and the gentleness, the violence, and the tenderness. No, I said simply. It doesn't change anything. His kiss was desperate, claiming, sealing a promise between us that went beyond words. 6 months later, I stood in Dante's garden, our garden, watching Emma play with the new puppy he'd surprised her with last week. The estate had become home in ways I never expected. The guards were familiar faces now, the routines comfortable, the danger a distant memory since Marcus had been handled. I didn't ask for details, didn't need to know. Dante came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Happy? Surprisingly, yes. I leaned back into his warmth. I never thought I'd say that again. I told you I'd protect what's mine. Possessive as ever. Always. He turned me in his arms, and I saw the small velvet box he held. Marry me. My heart stuttered. Dante, I know it's fast. I know I'm not the safe choice or the sane choice. But I'm yours, Sarah. Completely and irrevocably yours. And I want the world to know it. I want Emma to have my name, my protection. Everything I can give her. I want to wake up every morning with you in my bed and fall asleep every night knowing you're mine. Say yes. I looked at the ring. A simple, elegant diamond that must have cost a fortune. And then at the man holding it. This dangerous, powerful, surprisingly gentle man who'd saved me and claimed me and loved me with an intensity that still took my breath away. Yes, I said, and watched his face transform with joy. The kiss that followed was interrupted by Emma's delighted squeal. Mama! Dante, watch me! We broke apart, laughing, and watched my daughter, our daughter, chase the puppy through flowers Dante had planted because I'd mentioned loving gardens. This life was nothing I'd planned, nothing I'd expected. Dante's world was dark and dangerous, full of violence and power I'd never fully understand, but it was also full of love and protection and fierce devotion. I'd traded one cage for another, yes. But this cage had a door I could open any time I wanted. I stayed because I chose to, because loving Dante Salvatore was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely worth it. Because he was mine as much as I was his. And in his arms, surrounded by his deadly empire and gentle hands, I'd finally found what I'd been searching for all along. Home. The wedding was small, just family, which meant Mrs. Chen, Emma, and a handful of Dante's most trusted people. I wore a simple white dress. Emma scattered rose petals. And when Dante slid the ring onto my finger, his voice was rough with emotion. Mine, he whispered. Yours, I agreed, always. And I meant it. Because Sarah Mitchell had died in that courtroom 6 months ago. Sarah Salvatore was someone stronger, braver, loved beyond measure. Derek had tried to take everything from me. Instead, he'd led me to the one man who would give me everything. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, and I was living better than I ever had. Safe. Protected. Loved. In the arms of the most dangerous man I'd ever known.